Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagen. I have my guest, Stephen Cohen. Suzuki does not suck. The Montreal Canadiens just came off a 4-3 victory in overtime. It was a beautiful goal by Cole CAUFIELD to finish it off. The Canadiens played a tough game against a tough team that's been playing some good hockey, another young upstart team. Obviously not in a great playoff position or opportunity, but the game was very much a back and forth game. A couple of goals by Nick Suzuki, a nice goal by Newhook with a good play by Beck in the corner to kind of set him up off a rebound from Laine. And then Cole CAUFIELD with just a spectacular goal to win the game. The Canadiens have now won 3 games in a row since the Four Nations Cup break. They are still 5 points behind the wild card spot, but they are keeping pace. They have 2 games back-to-back against Buffalo, I believe, coming up. So that should be a big test. They play on Saturday, and then they play on Monday. Saturday is in Buffalo, and Monday's in Montreal. So that being said, like I said, I have Stephen Cohen here. Would love his take on the game, get his perspective. I have my own, so we'll go back and forth from there. So I'd love to hear from you. What's going on?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. It's been a while. I think the last time I was on the show, the Canadiens were riding a very nice streak, and then they hit a rough patch before the Four Nations break. And it was a little disappointing. I have to admit, I started to lose faith in the team, but it probably was because they were tired. They played a lot of games prior to the Four Nations Cup. The injury bug hit them, and they got into a little rut where they were not playing good hockey. I'll say this, since the Four Nations Cup, it looks like a lot of teams, the players that did not participate, they took a nice siesta, did not look like they came back prepared to play. A lot of the Canadians, from what I've heard on their offseason, I think Laine went to Boston and hung out, and he was thinking hockey. A lot of the Canadians kind of were prepared for after the break. Sam Montalbo, I call him, his nickname Monty. He was psyched. He was itching to get out there in the Four Nations Cup. Came back with the championship, and he's played very, very well, aside from, in my opinion, just one bad goal in 3 games. So I'll give him that pass. He's played fantastic hockey. He's one of the big reasons why the Canadiens are 3-0. And just to talk about this particular game, I was talking to you offline, Rick, before the game. You brought up very valid points that San Jose, although their record is probably the worst in the league, this team is young, hungry, and they've been playing some good hockey. And the Canadiens ran into, in my opinion, a trap game where they are the better team. They should handily beat this team, right, the way they're playing. And then suddenly they're in a dogfight to just scrap out even a point. And then this game was back and forth. Some very, bad plays by the defenseman, a bad play by the goalie. Next thing you know, we're giving up 3 goals, and the score is tied 3-3. Cole CAUFIELD with, I want to say, I'm thinking back because I've been a Canadiens fan for a long time. I was a kid back in the Guy Lafleur days, and I've seen some crazy goals scored by Montreal Canadiens. But this goal, given the overtime and the fact that we're trying to get back into a playoff race, I got to say this was one of the nicest goals, given the situation that we were in. Putting the puck between his legs, turning on a second gear, and then putting it in the top corner to win the game in overtime. You couldn't ask for a more spectacular finish. This could, in my opinion, if the Canadiens kind of ride this out, they could turn this into like a really successful season. What's your take, Rick?
No, I mean, you said a lot of things that I agree with so far. So the Cole CAUFIELD goal was beautiful. I got a text, and somebody said he turned Celebrini inside out. Well, the good news is Celebrini's a great hockey player and is playing some great hockey. The bad news, I guess, is that he is a forward at 18 years old. So if Cole CAUFIELD makes a move like that on a more veteran defenseman, it may not work, but it was a beautiful goal. It was, a huge fan of Cole CAUFIELD. Like you said, the timing of that goal was so important. The Canadiens needed the 2 points to stay in the mix. Nick Suzuki, 2 goals and an assist. I think he had a goal and 2 assists last game, I believe. He has 6 points in 2 games. Juraj Slafkovsky, 6 hits, turned over the puck several times. He had 8 hits the night before, or 2 nights ago, 4 or 5 the night after, playing the kind of hockey you need him to play as a power forward. with skill, which is going to be a huge benefit. The line, the line of Owen, Beck, and Patrick Laine and Newhook chipping in important goal. And then Emil Heineman, I think, remember when we were talking back when Laine came back from injury and then they had Carrier on defense, everything kind of settled in. And it's finally the time. I mean, tap on wood, Doc is injured and Josh Anderson is playing injured. But if you look at the lineup, when you have Heineman on a line with Evans and Armia, it just kind of settles all the lines up. If you have the first line going the way they are, and you have that line going, you're going to get Galley and Anderson playing well. And actually, Dvorak had a nice game tonight. He didn't score anything, but I thought he played pretty well for Dvorak. I'll leave it at that. And then the second line chipping in with a point, and I believe they were not plus, they were even, so they gave up a goal too. End of the day, I think that's a key piece. On defense, I'm a little bit worried. Gooley's been, maybe out for a while. And, I thought Struble played well, but, Jack Eye definitely is fighting the puck tonight. And the night before, he had 2 or 3 penalties. You can see he was in the doghouse. He only played 10 minutes, and ultimately, that's going to be a key moving forward. But again, 3 wins in 3 games. Canadiens come out flying after the break. They're now at 61 points. They need to get to 92, 93 points. The math says they have to win, I think it's 16 of their last 23 games. That's no longer impossible. They won, 19 out of 26, a little harder, but 16 at 23, now it sounds like a possibility, especially with back-to-back games against Buffalo. So I agree with everything you're saying. We can talk more about some of the players. I mean, Montembeault was not sharp tonight. I think he made some key saves. He did make a couple of key saves when it mattered, but he also, gave us some shots. I mean, they were good players, right? We're talking about players like Celebrini and Toffoli getting shots and hitting posts. But he was not his A game, right? So when he plays his A game, he can win games. But when he plays like that, he's below average in nets, right?
Yeah, he reminded me a lot of Binnington in the Four Nations Cup. I was ragging on Binnington the entire tournament because he let in a couple of very weak goals during the tournament. Not, and the defense for Team Canada was very solid. But credit to Binnington, when it came down to it in the overtime, he was the reason Team Canada won the Four Nations Cup. And I got to give Monty credit. When it came down to the overtime, I don't know if you noticed, but there were I think 3 very key saves. And these are not easy saves. I think Matheson gave up the puck. And I don't know if it was Celebrini or the other.
I think Celebrini had it and he passed it across to the crease there and he made a crazy save.
But there was also another shot, the game winner. I mean, it was a point blank shot. That's game over. He not only made the save, poke checked the puck to Suzuki, who got it to CAUFIELD, and then CAUFIELD was, did his thing. But to talk about another few players, you mentioned Heineman. I think think about it, right? Heineman comes in, Doc comes out, and you've got 4 solid lines. You look at the stats, Kirby Dach has had a pretty bad season up to now. If you look at the stats, he's a minus 29, and the players that play on his line are not even close to minus 29. So that just tells you a lot about his play on the defensive side. He's not good. And when you're playing hockey, team hockey, right, and you're trying to win a game, minus 29 is not going to get it done, right? There's a problem there. And I really believe that his absence from the lineup and adding a kid like Beck and a kid who's hungry, right? And then having Heineman back in the lineup, who was spectacular tonight. I think that is I think there's a little chemistry there. And I think that has a lot to do with the Canadiens' success over the last 3 games, even though Doc did play in, I think, one of them or one and a half of them. Or maybe a half of one, but
he played the first game. He played
the first game, right?
And then he got hurt. Yep.
Yeah, and then he got hurt. And I'll just say one more player that really impressed me. He's playing hurt, but he's all over the ice. And this is really sparking the team to even play better, even though he hasn't put the puck in the net or even had 1 goal in the last 3 games, is Josh Anderson. Right. Josh Anderson has been, in my opinion, spectacular over the last 3 games. So the Canadiens every night are going to be playing playoff type hockey. And this is why I want people to watch a guy like Josh Anderson. This is a player you need on your team, right? To really, go into the corners, generate chances, because every goal means something, right? And because now starting to play March hockey, where you're trying to make a run for the playoffs, you need a player like Josh Anderson. And this kid he's stepping up to the plate. So as far as I'm concerned,
you're calling out Josh Anderson as a good player? All right, I'm shocked.
yeah.
No, I'm teasing. Listen, I'm not gonna rag on Josh Anderson this season. He's played much more consistent hockey. I think the problem I've always had with him in the past is he hasn't been there game in, game out, year after year. Last year was an off year for sure, but even in the years that he had good seasons with the Montreal Canadiens, they seem to be 10 or 20 games, maybe 30 games where he just kind of he didn't do what he's doing this whole season. So kudos to him. I think he's better suited in the lineup where he is, right? I think he was playing first line power play and second top two lines. I think he could do that. He's not like going to hurt those lines. But if he's slotted in that middle to bottom, like middle six kind of player, and he's slotted to play, defensive hockey and play hard hitting hockey, then he's doing and he's moving his feet like he has been. I think he's found his identity like that, and I think that's his identity. And that's how he played in the playoffs. Again, he's a great player for that type of hockey. He's an important player on a team if he plays like this. And I've always said, if he can play. His good games are always good, but if his bad games are good, then you suddenly have a great player. I think he was always, when you look at Armia, he was a lot like that too. And I think he's having a much more consistent season as well. Finding their rhythm in this second tier, I guess you can call it, because I know they're not fourth line players. That's not a fourth line or third line. I think the second line is playing the worst out of the four. So, but that's kind of where they fit in that bottom six. It's a solid bottom six. And Armia and Anderson are key players. I just want to call out what you're saying about Kirby Dach. So I agree, but I want to put a caveat around it. So he was minus 24, 30 games. Okay. So he was terrible the first 30 games. The team was terrible the first 30 games. He was a big part of that. He wasn't moving his feet. He was getting his feet under him. He started playing better after, in the early part of December or mid-December when the whole team started playing better and the team really went forward. He still is a minus player since then. And I agree with you. He's a deficient defensive player and he's not playing good 200-foot hockey. I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing is he's probably not going to be a center. That's what's going to end up happening. The Canadiens are going to need to find a second line center, and Kirby Dach will find his way as a winger on the middle in the middle six. And if you do that, if you don't give him the responsibilities of a centerman in the defensive zone, you'll see that he won't be as bad defensively and the team will be better. So I think what we're seeing this year is that Kirby Dach has lost his C position, in my opinion. And guys like Owen, Beck, like you said, are 200-foot players. And you can see that line is getting better because they're not spending as much time in the defensive zone. So that's my take on that. And again, ultimately, minus 29 is minus 29. He has the stats, but a lot of those happened in the early part of the season.
Agreed.
So, that's my take on that. But again, I'm not going to defend his defensive play. I watched that game. That line, when it's Dach, Newhook, and Laine, they get trapped in the defensive zone. And Laine, listen, the guy has an amazing shot, and he does some positive things, but man, is he not good defensively either. So when you put the two of them together, it's pretty troubling.
Right. Okay, so here's my take on this, okay? If Kirby Dach put in 50 points, right, up to this point, or even 45 points, I wouldn't be even having this discussion with you. Look at Laine Hutson, right? And I listened to some of the coaches talk about, their thoughts about Laine Hutson. And Laine Hutson, right, is a minus 19? Maybe after tonight, he's last season minus 8. Minus 17, right? That's not good for a defenseman on a team that's, a little bit above 500. But the guy also has put in close to 50 points. So if you're going to take the good with the bad because he's an offensive defenseman. He's going to get better defensively. But he's generating chance. He's oh my God, when he gets the puck, you don't know what's going to happen. Like magic happens when he touches the puck. Like he turns these plays, negative plays into positive plays, and I'll take the negative. And I think the coaches of the Canadiens will take the negative when he generates those kind of chances. Kirby Dach, on the other hand, right, I'm not seeing that offensive production from him for the defensive lapses that he's giving up. So for me, right, it's not worth the squeeze of the lemon. And until he starts generating more offense, he's going to be a big problem on the Habs. So I don't know. That's my take on Kirby Dach right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, listen, let's not keep dwelling. I think we're on the same page. The only thing, again, I'll defend Laine Hudson on that, I think 8 or 9 of those minuses are on empty nets. So, I mean, it is what it is, but, I guess that everyone gets empty nets against them, but, and he gets a lot of points on the power play, which don't count as pluses. So, yeah, I mean, listen, Laine Hudson has shown that he's an important player on this team. He is a rookie, 20-year-old defenseman. A 20-year-old defenseman in general have hard time defensively. I've actually been impressed with his defensive ability. A lot of those minuses are when he's playing with Mike Matheson when he plays bad. He's had some games where he's -4, -5, and it's with Mike Matheson, and they both play. Matheson played bad, and Laine Hudson can't cover for that. So yeah, listen, you can't compare. I agree. I think I'm going to go back to the defense of the first 30 games. Kirby Dach had very few points. He's up to, I think, 22 now. So he's getting a few more points in the last, 30 games or so. But yeah, that's not enough to warrant playing. What I think we're learning is he's not a 200-foot player. He's not going to play center on a good team. He isn't. He's not going to play center on a good team unless his 2 wingers are the best defensive wingers ever. And that's not what you want in a second line player. So cool. Anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I know we didn't. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to talk about the trade deadline. So this is an interesting topic. Before we close out the show.
Yep.
So obviously the Canadiens are in this middle. They're in kind of a tough situation, right? The team is playing really well, which is really good. I mean, that's a great situation, right? But then they've got 2 players, Armia and Evans, who are those are players that the Canadiens are probably going to lose at the end of the season with with nothing to show for it. So the question is, do you keep Evans played? They actually played Evans on the 3-on-3. So that's how much, Martin St. Louis thinks of Evans. You're not playing a 4th line center in 3-on-3 hockey in overtime unless you think very highly of them. I think very highly of and I'm right. Listen, I agree that if the Canadiens were they didn't get off to a good start after the Four Nations break, that, it was evident that they were going to trade Evans. I'm hopeful they're going to sign him. I would overpay him a little bit. That's just me because I know what I'm getting. And if I'm building a team for the future, I want Jake Evans, not as my top 6, but I want him as my 3rd line center. I believe that this kid is good enough to be the 3rd line center for the new Canadiens, right? With the way he plays, he's the checking center. The 3rd line center is typically the player that's going to be on that line that covers the best players on the other team. And I think he's worth $4.5 million a year. I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy, right? But that's me.
I don't.
Joel, no, I've read a lot of Habs fans who have really, a lot of them are saying, yeah, I won't give him more than 3.5, 3.75 million a year. I think he's worth 4.5. I mean, clearly Montreal Canadiens have to overpay to get him to stay. And I would go to between 4 and 4.5, even that much, not more than that, to keep him here for the next 5 years because he's in his prime. And I think we're now starting to see Jake Evans for just the start of the prime of his career. So don't get me wrong. I think Owen Beck is going to be a great player. And I think he's going to fill a need for the Canadiens. But I see Owen Beck and Jake Evans as centermen for the Canadiens in the future. And then one more player, Joel Armia. He wants to stay in Montreal from what I've heard. He really loves it here. And I think that he's willing to take a hometown discount potentially to stay. Potentially, because his life on the off season is in Finland. He apparently loves it in Montreal. So, and he's a good player. I mean, frankly, he shows up in the playoffs. You're going to see in the next 10 games what Joel Armia means to the Canadiens if they're going to make it to the playoffs. I don't know what your take is.
No, listen, I think my take on the trade deadline is pretty straightforward. I think the Montreal Canadiens are making it hard on Hughes and Gordon. I think if they would have stumbled after the break, I think it wouldn't make sense to keep some of these players because you can get some assets. The Canadiens have so many assets, though. They have so many draft picks. They have so many different young prospects. And if they have a chance to compete and be in the mix, I would keep them all. I wouldn't trade anybody. I wouldn't even trade Jake Evans because the word on the street is they can't even get a second round pick for Jake Evans. So if you can't get a second round pick for him, which by the way, only like what percentage of second round picks make the NHL? So why are you giving up on a guy that can help you the rest of? Yeah, I mean, but he's one of the very few, right? There's very few, and you name Laine Hudson. I can name 31 others that were drafted that year that probably weren't in the NHL and may never be in the NHL. So you're right. There's one, but you have to get that lucky one. What I will say though is, if you can get, there's been rumors that you can get like for Jake Evans and Yoel Armia, a first round pick, and then you can turn that first round pick into a real player or use it, then there's a question, right? But again, to pay him, Steven, I'm not opposed to any number, to be honest. I don't think there's a number that I would not pay him except for the number that he wants. And my understanding is the number that he wants is off the charts. So again, we don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know, but we don't know. We don't know what he's asking for. How much term? Does he want 7 years, 8 years? He might. You don't know what he wants, right? And so there is always that number, like you're saying 4.5. What if you see him in the summer and he gets 4.8 from a team with no tax, and he was thinking in his head he needs 5.5 to stay in Montreal? You're not gonna sign him for 5.5. He's not good enough. He's not important enough a player. And the Canadiens have Kapanen, Beck, Hage. I know they're not the same, and I know it's going to take them years to be the same as Jake Evans.
Yeah.
But they have 3 guys that can step in and play decent hockey, and then you need to just develop them. And again, I know that's guys like CAUFIELD and even Suzuki are getting into their prime, and so you don't want to have those guys playing with weaker players. But the Canadiens have a ton of cap space next year. They have a ton of cap space coming up the year after that. The word on the street is they're going to be close to $40 or $50 million to spend. Now, does that mean you pay Jake Evans $6 million a year to keep him? I don't think that makes sense, right?
No.
So that's the question. You'd rather take that money and put it towards a guy like a Rack or like a Marner or something like that and have a great player join your team. So that's my take on that. And that's my take on the trade deadline.
Yeah, understood. So first of all, I would love to have Mitch Marner on this team. I think Mitch Marner is an underrated player. He reminds me a lot of Nick Suzuki,
Probably better, but he's a very smart hawk. I would love He's
to
a
see
winger,
Mitch...
though. He's a winger.
Yeah, so you can still have Mitch Marner and Suzuki on the same line.
Yeah, that wouldn't suck.
That wouldn't suck, right? Mitch Marner
or Marner
Nick
with
Suzuki and
Demigol.
CAUFIELD.
But that's my question, Steve. I hate to cut you off, but if you can save your money on Evans and not pay him $5 million a year or 4.5 and use that money to pay a Marner to get him on the team, you have to kind of think about it. But I wouldn't just unload Evans for a 3rd round pick.
This is what I would do. I would offer Evans probably $22 million for 4 years, take it or leave it. Sorry, for 5 years, $22 million for 5 years, and let him walk. If he wants to walk for that, I don't think he's going to get a better offer than that. I think any team.
I think he'll get an equal offer with less tax. That's what he's going to get. I mean, that's not out of the realm of what somebody's going to pay him that. So that's the problem, right?
So and the question is he willing to stay with his buddies who have helped him get to where he's gotten, right? And he knows the coach who really loves him, or he can end up in the doghouse. Look at KK. KK went to Carolina. I think Carolina is biting their tongue that they got stuck with this guy who is horrible. He's a horrible hockey player. He is probably not worth $2 million, and they got suckered to take that guy off of our roster. I knew right away that he was not, and you could tell when you're playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs and getting to the finals, and he scored a couple of key goals, but I knew KK was
but that's a different situation. When he wasn't a free agent, he was a restricted free agent. They offered him a ridiculous contract, $6-point-something million for a player that never scored more than, I don't remember how many goals. It was not 20. I was like, in the teens. And so, I mean, listen, he's a good playoff player. He's been good. Listen, he's overpaid, but I think that was one of those things where the Canadiens tried to steal Aho from Carolina. That's a different situation. Let's not go on that one. I think at the end of the day, Steve, my take is the Canadiens should not trade anybody at the deadline. I've always kind of said that, especially now that they're getting closer. If they were out of it, like you said, then maybe you can, unless some team really wants one of your players, and it may not even be one of the unrestricted free agents, right? Like it might be a Mike Matheson, or maybe it's a Patrick Laine, or who, like, maybe somebody wants a player that you're not going to maybe want to be with long term, and you can get something, a hockey trade happen at the end of the at the break at the end of the trading deadline. But I think the other variable is you can keep Evans and you could try to sign him after the season too. It's not like he's going to go away, or you could trade him, which I wouldn't do, and try to sign him after the season too, which
I think it's also keeping him sends a message to the team that management wants to keep the chemistry together. They believe in this young team. And I'm with you. I mean, if the Canadiens can whip off another couple of wins, which I think they're going to, which I think is the last thing we should talk about. I believe that the Canadiens, like you said, will probably stay put at the trading deadline unless they're getting rid of somebody that they really don't want or need.
Yeah, I mean, they might drop a Dvorak if they can get some asset, or they can get maybe a Savard, who's an important player, but he's been playing pretty bad, let's be honest. So, like, if you can get assets for, like I said, I don't think they're going to do anything to kind of just do something. I think they're going to do it only if they get an overpayment for one of their players. That's just going to happen.
You know, it's an interesting piece that the Canadiens can add to get them to over the hump. So I'm looking at the San Jose Sharks. Tyler Toffoli doesn't look like he belongs there. I mean, they're a young team. And then they have Tyler Toffoli, who, don't get me wrong, I think the guy who generated chances today, when he touches the puck, good things happen. I think to make a little playoff push, just to get an asset for the rest of the season, I wouldn't mind the Canadiens trading an asset for them to be buyers at the trade deadline and picking up a guy like Toffoli, who I'm sure will be expendable by the Sharks, because I don't see what's the purpose of having him on that team. So it makes no sense. And I think that he's a tradable asset, and I don't know what his contract situation is.
I mean, that might be the problem. That might be the problem. I don't know if the Canadiens have enough cap space to take on his full salary for the rest of the year. I'm not surprised that you called that a Toffoli trade. You throw in a Josh Anderson.
What do you think?
Listen, I mean, I don't think I honestly been saying this from the beginning. I mean, we've been talking about this when the Canadiens were on a run and everyone was talking about they should pick up a second line center. I've been pretty consistent all year. I've been saying the Canadiens are probably not going to make the playoffs. They're going to be in the mix. They're probably going to end up around 86 points. They're probably not going to be traders at the deadline, but they're probably not going to be buyers. They're going to run with this team and make it and see what goes. Do I think there's a chance they make a trade? Yes. Do I think that chance might help their team? I wouldn't be surprised. Do I think it's a guy like Toffoli? I mean, it could be. I don't know what it could be, but at the end of the day, the Canadiens have a lot of assets. They could make a trade like that, give up a second round pick or first round pick, if they want to. It could be interesting. I don't know the answer to that question other than, like I said, I think they're going to be stable. I think they're going to run with this lineup. And again, unless somebody overpays I'd be really disappointed if the Canadiens trade Jake Evans for a third round pick or Yoel Armia for a fifth round pick.
So
I would be really disappointed in that. So
would you, I'm interested. Could you look up very quickly what Toffoli's contract situation is?
Yeah, I can look it up. And let's go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that if it is, a situation where
he had $6 million a year. It's $6 million.
I know, but how many years does he have left?
He signed a 4-year. He signed until 27, 28. So it would be 3 more years. He'd have to.
Yeah. It's not going to happen then. Right. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
I mean, listen, I don't think he's a bad player, and I think he could probably play another 2 or 3 good years of hockey, and the cap is going up. But a player like that could be in the mix for the Canadiens, or they could look to stabilize their defense with another right-handed defenseman, because they're currently playing with 2 left-handed defensemen on one line, and Jack Guy's not playing really well, and Struble is still, a little bit.
I remember Goulet is going to come back.
He might, but he's a left-handed shot. So what I'm saying is, if he comes back and he's a left-handed shot, then you sit Struble and Jack Guy and you play whoever this guy they get. I mean, if they can get imagine they get another Carrier to play right defense with Matheson and him. And now you have 3 solid right defense with Hudson's Matheson and Goulet, right? That's a solid defense partner pairing. So anyway, we can go and buts for the rest of the night in terms of who to get and what to do. I think a right-handed defenseman or a solid forward is something that could happen, but I don't think it's going to happen. Vice versa, I think they could trade Jake Evans, Armia, Dvorak, and Savard.
Savard, right.
They could also trade a Matheson or a Laine or something like that if somebody wants them. Or you would love this, a Newhook or a Doc. They might trade somebody like that, but again, we'll see. Ultimately, we have a week or so to go, so we'll figure it out. So that being said, the week to go, the Canadiens are playing Buffalo 2 times. Who do they play after that? Let me just remind myself. They then go to
Florida,
go
right?
to Edmonton. No, they go to Edmonton and Calgary. So they're on their Western road trip where they go to Edmonton and
Right.
Calgary.
And Vancouver.
But the trading deadline is after the Edmonton game. So they have 3 more games before the deadline. 2 against Buffalo, 1 against Edmonton. And then they go Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle. Then they're home against Florida and Ottawa.
I think the future of Mr. Jake Evans relies on how they do against the Buffalo games. I think they're going to beat Buffalo. Although Buffalo is playing well, I think we're a better team. The first game is in Buffalo and then we're at home, or is it the opposite?
Saturday in Buffalo, Monday at home.
So I wonder, and that's the other thing, I wonder if Monty's going to get both starts or they're going to split it between Monty and Dobes. Dobes had a very weak game his last start. I believe in Dobes. I wouldn't mind having him play one game, but Monte is the hot hand and they need to win. And I wouldn't be surprised if he plays both games because, he's playing very well. I have to admit, one bad goal, which I was very upset about. But aside from that, he struggled tonight, but he also came up big and won the game for them. So what are your thoughts?
I think the Canadiens are going to go with, Monty both games. I mean, I think the Canadiens, I think they have to win both games to keep the momentum. Do I think they will win both games? I think so. I really do. I think the Canadiens are going to win both games. I think they're going to be close. There might be an overtime game in there, and they may not win one game in overtime. But I think it's going to be a close couple of games, and I think the Canadiens are just playing good hockey. As long as Anderson stays out there, and I'm not saying it's just because it's Anderson. I think it's, again, I know you're laughing, but I think it's not Anderson that's the important part. It's the lineup staying kind of solid. Because, again, if we lose Anderson, then who plays on that line? And then
he came back, right? He played in the third period, right?
He did. He came back. So I think he's going to play. And again, I'm not in love with the guy. Okay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm in love with the lineup. And I want to make sure you understand that. But I think he's an important piece to the puzzle and he's playing good hockey. And that line is playing good with him. And you put somebody else, doesn't mean that line's going to be bad, but then something's going to change. Like if you put Pizzetta on that line, it's a different lineup. If you put put Heineman on that line might be better, but then you have to put Pizzetta with, Armia and Evans, right? That's my point. He's an important player, but so are those players, right? If we lose Heineman, it was affecting the team. If you lose Evans or you lose Armia, it affects the team. It's all about the chemistry of the team. And so from my perspective, I think that's the case. I think the Montreal win the next 2 games. I think Montreal goes to Edmonton. We'll see what happens there. I think Canadians do not trade anybody. That's my take. I think they're just gonna roll with it and hope they can sign Evans. They don't have to sign Evans before March 7th. They just have to sign him before July 1st. And then, we'll see where it goes from there. I still don't believe they're a playoff team. I think they're a playoff contender. I think they're going to get closer and closer to the mix. I think the challenge is there's so many teams that are fighting each other for the same spot and they're 5 points behind. And they just have to go on this run, which they've started, which is great. If they can stay healthy on the offense and get Gooley back before the end of the year, and Beck plays good hockey. I know Doc is out, but he hasn't been, like you said, he hasn't been the difference maker of some of the others. Beck seems to be stepping in and doing an equivalent job, I would say. I wouldn't say he's better offensively or defensively, but he's better defensively. I like the way Beck plays hockey, so I'm okay with that mix-up. But there's probably a couple of players on the team that I think don't affect the offense that much. I think Newhook is another player that if they lost him, could they replace him maybe with somebody from the AHL or something? But other than that, like even Laine, who's not playing the greatest hockey, he plays an important role on the power play because he either scores a goal or somebody has to cover him and it opens it up for the other players. So that's my take. I don't know what your take is.
No, I think no trade at the trading deadline. I think we win probably one game and we maybe either win it in overtime the second game or lose it in overtime. I think we take either 4 out of 4 or 3 out of 4 points against Buffalo, which I think is going to be good enough to stay in the mix. And I really like the future of the way this team is going. I'm crossing my fingers that Goulet is back for if
Michel
the Canadiens
Goulet?
stay in it.
Michel Goulet's on the team?
No, not Goulet.
Gooley, I know. It's all
Goulet.
good.
Goulet is back for like the final playoff push in April, or maybe in the playoffs in May if the Canadiens make it, because he's such an important piece. He's definitely a top 2 defenseman. Watching Team Canada play in the Four Nations Cup, I see no reason why the next Four Nations Cup you wouldn't see like a Caden Goulet on that team, because he's super strong. I mean, that guy is he's only going to get better.
Yeah. I think he was on the short list before he got hurt. So.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like as a backup or something. I mean, he's close. He's close. He's 22,
right.
Is he? 23 now? He's pretty young.
And he's getting better. And he's getting better.
He's going to be a solid defenseman for years to come. And obviously Hudson looks awesome out there. And so the Canadiens have 2. We'll see how Reinbecker progresses. He's doing okay in the minors. Demidov played today. He suited up for the KHL SCA. He played 0.0 minutes. He sat on the bench the entire game. Do you know that he is the leading scorer on the SCA team? And he played 0.0 minutes because he's 18 years old and the Russian coach, has it in for him. They probably offered him a contract to stay and he said no. And so they sat him off for the entire game. He just sat on the bench, and the team ended up losing 1-0. And their team lost 1-0. That coach should be fired.
So more motivation for him to come to Montreal next year.
Yeah, he'll be here. He'll be here unless something weird happens. He'll be here. He wants to come for sure. All right, I think we capped it off. Do you have a number? Do you have a score for Saturday night that you want to call out?
Yeah, I'm going to call out that we win 4-3.
All right.
And again, Laine Hudson. I'm calling Laine Hudson with probably 2 assists.
Okay.
Or 3 assists. Yeah, I think he's going to continue his magic, the Laine Hudson show.
All right. Love it. You called the same number I was going to call, so I don't know if I should do it. I think I have to. I had the Montreal Canadiens winning the game 4-3 in overtime, and Nick, he does not suck. Suzuki is going to score the goal in overtime. Nick Suzuki with another 3 points tonight, 3 points the last game, 2 points the game before. Since the break, he has 8 points in 3 games. He's back above a point per game going. This is Next Shift with Rick Wagen. Suzuki does not suck. Stephen Cohen, any last words?
No, thank you very much for having me. Go Habs.
Go Habs, go, guys. Thanks. Talk to you guys soon.